snow. So, when we last left our heroes, they had fought off a strange vampiric creature in the bounds of New Zealand, just to the northeast in the Wolf Forest, aptly named. Malcolm Harp had taken a bit of a beating during the combat, and unfortunately they lost one of their henchmen to the dire wolves that the vampiric creature summoned. They have retreated back to New Zealand to rest and heal up. Unfortunately, we don't have Malcolm tonight because Rob's not very well. We hope you get better soon, Rob. So we're going to say, just for convenience sake, that his character is still recovering from the vampiric attack, and that he's currently resting up in New Zealand. So, you guys are preparing to set out for the meeting with Brannan, or Lord Brannan as he styles himself, at Staffstone Tower. You know it to be 3 days' travel through the Whalesong Woods to the west of New Zealand. Obviously, any basic equipment you want to buy, you can do that. That's absolutely fine. However, before we continue, as you're all sort of making your preparations to set out and go about your business, etc., you're all getting your equipment ready, you're getting ready to set off. You're stood there talking to Lan Rivar Brock, who chose you as a mate to help restart this Ice Walker tribe, since hers was decimated by the pirates. A tribe that you've chosen to christen the Rising Embers tribe. When you see the small blue-skinned Ice Walker sage, Quilak, walking towards you, and he sort of like waves his hand towards you, Brock, as he approaches. He looks a little bit worse for wear, no doubt due to him getting very merry during the festivities of the previous few nights to celebrate your union with Lan Rivar. And as he approaches, he says, good, Brock, I'm glad I caught you. I heard you were leaving the village. As I said the other evening, I didn't want to brook tradition, so I wanted to give you a small gift. And he takes out a little like a leather pouch with a little drawstring, only about like the size of a fist, and he hands it over to you. He's like, there you are.
Okay. I'll just have a very quick look inside.
Okay, you open it, and inside is a small sort of blue silver ring with a teal coloured gemstone set into it. And he says, yes, this ring was blessed by the shaman of my tribe a long time ago to bring the protection of the spirits on any Ice Walker who should wear it.
Such a gift is very generous.
No, not at all. As I've said, I may have left some of our traditions behind, but I think it's important to commemorate unions such as any gestures that you and Lan.
And it's blessed by the shaman, you say?
Yes, the shaman of my tribe. And he hands you over this ring, the Band of the Tribe's Protector, which I've already added onto your character sheet. It gives you a +1 AAC and an additional +1 bonus to all your saving throws, which I've already altered your sheet to take into account.
Very cool. Well, I will gratefully accept this, very rare and precious commodity, and I'll put it straight on.
Indeed. And as you do so, you do feel, I suppose, almost like a warm sense of like well-being flows through your body. You feel slightly invigorated. That you could take on the world. He nods and he says, "Well, I wish the two of you all the best. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to go and get my head down for a little bit." And he sort of nods at you all, and then you see him sort of like staggering off back towards like the hut that he lives in.
Yeah, and I thank him again as he walks off.
He sort of like waves and nods.
Very kind indeed.
At which point, Lan, who's been stood there with you, is sort of like nodding and saying, "Oh yeah, that's a kingly gift, sort of thing." She says, "So, what do you plan to do now? Then, I mean, your friend is still injured."
Well, we have this meeting we're obliged to attend, or at least Weimar is obliged to attend, and I don't trust them enough to let him go on his own. So myself and Quintin are going to join him on the journey, but we won't be long. It shouldn't take more
She
than a
says,
week to
"Well,
be there and back."
in the eyes of the tribal spirit, we are now as one. If you plan to go to this meeting, whatever it is, then I shall travel there with you."
Think that's wise in the situation of our new and up and coming hope to rise a tribe?
Wisdom doesn't come into it, Brock. If we are, if our union is to be strong and be the foundation of the building of a new tribe, then we must be stronger together.
Well, I can't argue with you. That is the way of our people. So I will obviously do my utmost to protect you at all times. But you're right, we will be stronger together.
She nods. "And I have added her as a retainer to like the party, and you should be able to like move her token, etc. if you get into any combat." Obviously,
Cool.
technically she's like a level 0 human at the minute, because you have to get like 1 XP on your first adventure, and then you like get a level basically.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So she's rocking that sweet 4 HP at the minute.
Oof.
Yeah, level 0 is no joke, man.
Yeah, I'll do my best to protect her.
So obviously, as I say, you guys know that if you travel west, like directly west, through the Whale Song Woods, on the 3rd day you should sight Staffstone Tower, which is where this meeting is to take place. And obviously you've left yourself enough time to travel there. Obviously you've got a bit of time if you guys want to like have any discussions or do anything sort of like before you leave the village. So if there's anything you guys want to do, obviously shout up. Otherwise we can crack straight on with the travelling.
We didn't, for any reason, want to visit anywhere else on the way, like the cave of the pirates, just to see if they've sort of reusing it for anything, or Dear Son for any reason, or
Not that I can recall.
don't. Yeah, I don't think there's really any need to, is there?
It definitely wasn't mentioned as part of your original plans, but obviously it's down to you guys what you do.
Oh, it was only because it was nearby, really. But
Okay.
no, I
Always
think
check it out. It's not a problem.
yeah.
Okay, so you guys set off on your travels. Heading to the west, you travel for your first day. You start heading into the tall pines of the Whale Song Woods, heading past the ruins of Castlemaine, which are now pretty much entirely snowed over, but occasionally here and there sort of bits of stone and the cracked wooden remnants of the village that once stood there sort of jut up out of the thick snow. So we're now getting into like the sort of deeper part of winter. So the snowfall is quite heavy. It's not yet a massive hazard to travel. You're all wearing cold weather gear. As long as you're not like sleeping out in the open and you take reasonable precautions, it's not yet at that level where you're going to have to start making tests and it's going to start being dangerous and stuff like that. But you know that like within a month or so, like travel's going to get quite hazardous. The temperature, you can already feel the temperatures are starting to drop. Obviously, Brock, you know that like it's only going to get colder from here on in for like the next 3 or 4 months, and then slowly it'll start. So the winter will start tapering off, and it'll head back into the short summer. As you pass the river near New Zealand, you can already see that like there is a coating of ice on the surface of the river, and as you look southwards down to where it runs into the sea, you can already see sort of like large patches of ice that have begun to form around the shores as the sea in the sort of shallower parts slowly starts to freeze. Your travel is fairly uneventful for the first day. Luckily, as you're heading into the Whale Song Woods, the trees provide some shelter from the snow and from the wind, so it's not quite as cold. You all set up camp for the evening. You all have to eat a ration. You all set up watches, etc. The night passes fairly uneventfully. The second day, you all wake up in the morning. You all continue to the west, and as you do, you're passing by the ruins of the Mage's Tower, which, if I remember correctly, Weimar is the only member of the current party who's actually been to this tower before.
Yep.
So, does Weimar say anything about the tower as you're going past? You see the ruins much as you remember it. I mean, you're not like right next to it, but you can see like the top of this tower like sticking up above the trees. And obviously, Quentin, Brock, you can see like this stone tower, sort of quite badly weathered and a little bit dilapidated, but it's rising up above the trees. Still looks fairly sturdy, although obviously the frost and the weather has had some effects on it.
Because I don't think I've seen that before, because I think we normally follow along the coast, don't we? Or travel along the coast.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Weimar's the only one who's been here.
I shall mention it to Weimar then. I'll say, what's that structure or that tower just north of here? Do you know of this place?
Now, can you remind me, John, of the pertinent details that we learned about this place?
Indeed,
what we knew.
As you sort of think back through the mists of, because it was quite a long time ago, you remember that when you first came here with your group, you discovered that it appeared to have once been a tower belonging to a mage who believed that the only way to survive like the oncoming ice age was to effectively like adapt one's body to cope with the new climate. And effectively, for all intents and purposes, he built like a sort of spell chamber inside the tower, which was designed to like mutate creatures to like give them like natural immunities to cold and stuff like that. And he'd crafted a bronze servitor, a large golem, which
is still there because we trapped it.
We'll get to that in a second. And basically what he used to do is he used to send this golem out, and he'd be like, "Go and get me some animals." And then he'd like throw the animals into this like mutation chamber, and he'd like monkey around with their genetics effectively to see if he could breed a hardier species. The eventual aim being like, oh well, once I've got it all working, all the kinks ironed out, maybe we can use it on people so we can survive this oncoming ice age. Now at some point, something happened to this mage. He died, disappeared, whatever. However, the golem, not being given any new orders, just carried on doing what it had been told to do on its last orders. So it was just romping around the forest on like a regular circle, just sort of like grabbing anything it come across, animals, people, whatever, lobbing them into this like spell chamber. Obviously there's no one running the spell chamber. It's slowly breaking down because the wizard's not there to keep it reinforced and keep it all running right. So everything it threw in was just getting like horribly mutated. And then, but because the golem wasn't programmed to like give a shit about that, basically it was just like, I'm just programmed to like throw things in. All these mutated animals were then just like running off into the forest, and they believe that the village of Castlemaine, which was a village founded by sort of settlers travelling here as well, was destroyed by one such creature. It was like a huge sort of like bear creature that had been like mutated by the tower, and it basically trashed the village and killed most of the people there. The rest of the party, eventually they dug like a huge pit. So like the golem's not actually intelligent, but it's like double hard because it's just following the same pattern through the forest, like doing its like orders. So we know where it's going. We've scoped it out. We know exactly the route it takes. So they basically dug a big pit. Because at the time they were like, we haven't got anything that can damage it. 'Cause, I mean, it was before Weimar even had like the Sun Sword. So they were like, right, nothing we've got can damage it. We're going to dig a big pit. It fell into the pit because it's not intelligent. And then they were like, oh, it's in a pit. It can't like mutate anybody else. We'll just leave it there.
So I'll mention broadly, like not to go into too much detail, but the gist of it is, Brock and Quentin, there's some remnants of magic here, which we don't fully understand. I'd like to say, but I'm not a wizard, so I'd like to say that this has a bit of a tang of the same kind of foulness as we had on the Witch's Isle, with the monoliths and the channeling of whatever horrid power that was, to rack the flesh of creatures. That was people on the Witch's Isle. This is anything that moves really in the forest. So whatever magic was in the tower, it spawned, including like other things, a very large bear, with, if I recall correctly, it had not really a face, but more of a like a skull thing, and it spoke with a human voice. And I sleep better not contemplating if there was an actual human in the tower when the bear was made.
Yeah, basically
And
the bear creature they discovered, it could it sort of like used it could mimic like a human voice calling out for help. So its method of hunting would it be like it'd hide itself, it'd go to near where there was people, it'd be like, oh help me, I'm in trouble. Someone would come to investigate, and then they'd find this big bear with like a skull for a face, and it would just kill them and like eat them. And then like it seemingly like anyone it ate, it could like mimic their voice. So then it'd like go to like the next lot of people, call out in that person's voice, oh, falling down, help me, help me. They'd come, rinse and repeat. And the player characters killed that horrible creature.
yeah, with what, John? A pit.
Yeah, they basically did like a punji sort of trap with like spears in the bottom of it, and then like lured the bear into it, which is pretty cool.
It's been honestly, well, we would be well off if that tower wasn't there. It's I don't think it's doing the thing that it's supposed to necessarily, but, and at least of all now, because the servant of the tower, the whatever construction that is no longer doing its thing, but it's like it's spawning horrific things like actual nightmares. And yeah, we should make a point of dismantling that. I think maybe reuse the stone, do something better with it.
And as you're saying this, obviously you guys are like walking while you're talking. You've not just like stopped. You come to a place in the woods where you notice like a lot of the trees are like missing. Like the stumps are still there, but you can see any. I mean, you'll all easily notice this. You don't need to be a woodsman to see this. You can see like signs of like axe marks, like someone's like felled a load of like trees in this area. And you can see like not too many because of the heavy snowfall, but you can see like tracks, and there's like footprints effectively, and there's like tracks of like some sort of like vehicle, maybe a cart or something.
Sled.
Is this clearing a path, or is it just clearing a bunch of trees in like an area?
You sort of head into the sort of cleared area so you can get a better look, 'cause you've just come across like a couple of little trees. And as you head, you can actually see that it looks as though all the trees like surrounding this tower, and you can now see the tower, have been felled, and the tower's now in this ring of just like tree stumps and open space. But what captures your attention more is, as Weimar has described, there is this large pit like just outside the front of the tower, but next to this pit is what looks to be some sort of like wooden contraption that's been like built, like basically like a huge wooden winch has been built like right next to the pit. Although you can see it's clearly like not been used for a while because it's covered in snow and whatnot.
Well, that better not be what I think it is.
Which one?
I really hope that the thing is still in the pit.
Which thing?
The
It's like a bronze golem, wasn't it?
Is the construction of the sort of metal man figure that goes about doing its rounds in the forest, grabbing deer and whatnot, putting them in the tower.
Well, should we go and take a look?
Yeah. Very careful though. Still haven't quite figured out what we could even do about that.
Okay, as you guys move closer, obviously taking all due care and precaution, given what Wymos said, as you move up to like the edge of the pit, basically, you're not like going to fall in, but you can like look over the edge. You can see that there's near the winch the signs of something very heavy having been like dragged out of the pit, and then you can see a set of like cart tracks, like very deep. So like whatever was in the cart must have been like heavy, because the tracks are so deep. You can still see like the impressions in where the snow's fallen on it, and the tracks appear to be heading off to the west.
Well,
I think someone's taking your thing out the pit.
This is more to do with this sorcerer from
I'd
Fort
bet it
Eastbourne.
is. I bet it is. Like he's soldiers marching about, telling him stories about a bronze man in a pit. Yeah. Sounds like the kind of thing a sorcerer would pick up on.
And did you said, John, the path or the tracks are fairly recent?
Yeah, they're pretty recent. I mean,
The
within the
wagons,
last
I
sort of like week or so.
I mean, should we follow these tracks since they're going in the same direction as we're heading anyway, to see if we can learn any more?
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys make camp for the evening, because it's like pretty late in the day by the time you get there. Obviously you take like double precautions given where you are, but nothing uneventful happens during the night. Obviously for the previous day's travel, anyone down hit points can recover 1d3 hit points. You can also get an extra d3 for this evening, and you need to eat another ration, and then you travel on for the third day. Okay, so on the third day of travel, you set off fairly early in the morning, and within an hour or two, you see the stone shape of Staff Stone Tower. It's like a square stone tower with little turrets at the top, etc. There's a small stable, various bits and pieces, but it's a watchtower. It's not like a full-blown castle. As you're heading up, you can see there's a few guards around the entrance, wearing the purple and black livery of Fort Eastbourne, which seems to have been carried on to Staff Stone Tower, which isn't surprising. You can see there's a few soldiers sort of like knocking around the outside. You also see there's like quite a few horses like in this barn, sort of tethered up. You can see them. You could also see what appears to be a large cart basically parked outside of the tower with like a tarpaulin over it, and as you get closer you can see what appears to be like the end of a huge arm made of bronze like hanging out from under the tarpaulin, just sort of like trailing down on the floor.
Is this the creature you talked of, Weimar? This thing in the cart?
What was it covered entirely, or
You can just see like the arm poking out.
yeah,
but
just the arm.
It looks like a big bronze arm, so
Yeah.
chances are good unless it's like another big bronze thing.
Probably.
And do you think they will have a way to control it, or they've sort of temporarily?
Yeah, whatever they've done,
Stopped it.
it's not moving. So at least they can do that. Can they make him stand back up? Don't know.
But it all shouts magic involvement.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Oh yes.
Hmm.
It's this thing has spent who knows how long grabbing things from the forest, putting them in the tower. Tower in turn has spent who knows how long making these things into nightmare creatures.
Are you guys approaching the tower, or what are you doing?
I'm going to try and sneak a peek at this thing's head.
Yeah, is it
Are
guarded?
you trying to like do it on the stealthy side of life, or
Yes, mate. Yeah, definitely.
go for it? Make that move silently roll.
Well, can I try and approach the tower in a quite a sort of loud and
Yeah, that's not a problem.
to try and distract a bit from the attention that might be
Yep.
towards Quentin?
There you go.
Okay. Okay, so as you roll up to the tower, you're not trying to do things on the stealthy side of life. You see one of the guards quite obviously spots you, Quentin, and he looks over at you and he's like, "Is there something I can help you with, sir?"
I just wondered about the big giant arm.
Oh, that, he says. Well, yes, of course. And he like pulls the top back a little bit, and you can see like it looks like a huge armored man made of bronze, like with a sort of sculpted face, etc. You can see like various like jointed, segmented armored sections. It appears to be like lying unmoving in this cart, and one of its arms is just hanging out. And he's like, "Yes, we found this thing on one of our patrols in the nearby areas. I'm sure you're probably aware. The Lord of Fort Eastburn wants the area clearing out of dangers as much as possible to make it safe for the people. So he sends out regular patrols. Found this thing in some sort of pit outside of an old stone tower. Took us bloody ages to bring the thing down, but eventually we were able to kill the beast." And he like slaps his hand on this metal figure. It's like a dang. He like slaps his hand on it, and he's like, "Yeah, it took us ages to bring it down, but bring it down we did. And well, we brought it back here. As far as I understand, the plan is to melt it down and salvage the metal for something more useful. I believe Lord Brannon's planning on launching a more thorough expedition to explore the tower once he has a meeting with some visiting dignitaries shortly. I believe he's planning on getting around to hashing out his plan about that once this meeting's dealt with."
Well, I'm glad you're around to get rid of these things.
Well, indeed. Says, Lord Brannon wants this area safe for settlers and the people in it, and obviously we need to thin out some of the barbarous dangers on the coast before people can really rest easy and know that they're safe within the bounds of the domain, so to speak.
Well, thanks for sharing. I'll make sure my dignitary is well informed of your progress.
Ah, you're one of the staff of one of the dignitaries.
Yes, Weimar.
Oh, yes, he's the fellow who's been tapped for rulership of one of the new towers, isn't he?
Yes, in New Zealand.
Yeah, he says obviously we're not, being a lovely god such as myself, we're not privy to all of the details, but you know we've heard a few things come down that there's the new tower going to be built, and obviously we've heard the name Weimar as being tapped as one of the potential castellans for the towers. So well, I and he sort of like he gives you like a little salute, and he says, "Well, I hope your meeting goes well, sir."
Thank you.
Then he just like flops the top back over the bronze man. You see him actually like he struggles. Obviously it's well heavy, but he like lifts the arm up. He's like, and then like plonks it back on the cart with a clang, flips the top over it.
Weimar, that's your beast.
Right, well, I'm happy that it's not moving. What's the plan with it?
They want to melt it down and repurpose the metal. But they're also planning an expedition to your tower.
They can have the tower. That tower, I presume.
Yeah, that tower with the golem. Yeah.
Yeah, they can have it. It's not going to be good for them either, but, there's... One supposes that the will of their lord is quite adamant.
Well, we just need to hope that the mutation thing isn't happening outside of its chamber now.
As long as they can't repurpose it in some way. That foul magic you talked of.
As you're having this conversation, another guard from the tower approaches, and he gives you all a salute, and he says, good, I take it you're here for you're one of the visiting dignitaries, and he sort of like looks around you all as though he's expecting you to like, introduce yourselves.
Yes, hello, we're from New Zealand. This is Brock. This is Quentin, and I'm Weimar.
And your lady friend, and he gestures at Lan.
Yes, we have also several others, including Lan over here. In the spirit, also, there is Malcolm Harp.
Is he not here? I did have a message to impart to him.
Well, he is regrettably indisposed at the moment. So if you do have a message, we can definitely make sure that it gets to him.
Well, I don't see that'd be a problem. Yes, I was given a message by Castellan Dixon. I was to tell him that the pouch of gold he left for the wandering knight Sir Javan was given to him. That Sir Javan stayed at Staffstone for a day, equipped himself, and then left. He said he was heading north, planning to make for Fort Hawk. I believe Castellan Dixon told him that he probably wouldn't find the pirates he was looking for, given the state of the sea freezing over at the minute. They're probably miles away by now. I think that was about 3 days ago. Like I say, he left heading north.
Mm-hmm.
That was the message she gave me.
Well done.
Not at all, sir. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Any plans, since we're all in the business of tower building these days?
Indeed.
Any plans for this one?
For Staffstone?
No, this one with the source of, some concern along the way from New Zealand to Staffstone. There is a dilapidated one.
The one where the metal man was found?
The very same.
He says, well, I know my lord in the future is planning... he's planning a fact-finding expedition there. I believe that the hope is that if it's not too badly damaged, it can be repurposed and used as another watchtower along the coast, since obviously, especially in this weather, with the somewhat lamentable lack of raw materials in Valkonen, it's quite time-consuming and obviously very costly to actually build towers. And, well, when there's one already sat there, if it can be made safe and secure, it seems a shame not to use it when it's practically just sat there at the moment.
If I can offer a suggestion, a layman's suggestion, to do with primarily dismantling the tower, not disposing of the materials per se, dismounting the tower, cleansing the area of, fell powers. That tower, good sir, is haunted by the powers arcane, and it is not good for people to be in.
Of course, I'll report this to my lord. Do you have any further details you can give me, sir?
Let's say that creatures of flesh, such as you and I, fare not that well when exposed to these powers inside the tower. and it would be unsafe for anyone to enter and poke about.
I see. Well, thank you for passing this on. I will certainly relay this to my lord, although obviously the final decision about such things would rest with him, of course.
Yeah. Well, are there other parties arriving?
He says, well, yes, there's a number of visiting dignitaries arrived. Most of them are already here. There's of course Lord Brannan, obviously. I'm afraid Miss Dixon is currently elsewhere on business, but she hopes to return for the end of the meeting. There's that strange elven fellow who turned up with his retinue earlier on today, and there's a captain from Fort Hawk. I think his name was Captain Boyd. He's representing the interests of Lord Carabas Hawk at the meeting, and I think that's about it. It's a fairly small meeting as far as these things go.
Any diversions planned?
Not as far as I'm aware, sir.
Very good.
Do you wish to head straight there, or do you wish to refresh yourselves before?
I think we're good to go. Brock, Quentin,
Good to go.
Lan.
Get it over with.
Yeah, I think we are good to go.
Right you are, sir. And this guard escorts you into this stone tower. You can see as you head in, there's like thick sort of rugs and wall hangings there, no doubt to try and keep the worst of the cold out, but it's still quite chilly inside because it's a stone tower. You're led up the single staircase to a wooden door. The guard knocks on the door, opens it, and as you were looking, you see it appears to be like a sort of a function room, I suppose you might call her a planning room. There's like a large table in there, a number made out of wood, a number of wooden chairs dotted around. On a large chair at the head of the table, you can see Lord Brannan sat there. He's wearing his long cloak with like the white sort of like fur around it, sort of pale, like chiseled features, long hair. You can also see, who any of you who were involved in the siege of Fort Kersey will recognise but let's call him a wizard. The wizard who led the Shadow Elves, the one who had the mask that seemed enchanted to like move like it was actually flesh. He's sat there. He's holding a staff of black wood. He's sat on one of the chairs. You see like wisps of shadow sort of drifting up off his form. He's wearing a long cloak, and like I say, he's wearing this face mask that looks like flesh. Perhaps it's enchanted to look like flesh, who knows, but it's obviously like a mask that he's wearing over his face. Like when he speaks, like wisps of shadow come out of his mouth, etc. You can also see a man wearing blue and green livery with a sort of, it looks like an eagle like motif in like silver on the front of it. He has like a ginger moustache and like sideburns. He's wearing one of those sort of like circular tin helmets on his head. There's like a breastplate on, that sort of thing. And he's sat there. As you walk in, everyone sort of like stands up politely, and you see Lord Brannan gestures to a smattering of empty seats, and he says, "Well, gentlemen, it appears the last of our visitors have arrived. Won't you please take a seat, and we can get the introductions out of the way, and then we can carry on with discussing the pressing matters." He then, as everyone sits down, he remains, assuming you guys sit down, he remains standing, and he says, "Well, I'll start with the introductions. I am Seth Brannan, currently the acting Lord of Fort Eastburn and the Liege Lord of Staffstone Tower. Obviously, I've called this meeting because I believe we all have a shared interest in the future security of Valconan and protecting it from unfortunate influences, shall we say. But we'll get to that in the rest of the meeting. If the rest of you will please introduce yourself. At which point the shadowy elf creature stands up, and in a sort of a fairly an unsettlingly normal voice, but like seems to have like a weird sort of hissing like echo behind it. He says, "To those of you who do not know me, I am Prospero of the Shadow Elves. We currently occupy the area once known as Fort Kersey." He then looks around the table and you see this ginger-haired fellow with the livery on. He doesn't stand up, but he looks around and he says, "Captain Francis Boyd, acting on behalf of Lord Carabas Hawk of Fort Hawk. My lord passes on his apologies for not being able to attend this meeting in person. He is kept busy with other affairs. As I've said, he sends his apologies, but he has sent me in his stead." At which point, all eyes turn to you guys.
Well, I'll stand up and motion once again to everyone here. So this is Brock of the Ice Walkers, Quentin, and this is Landervar of the Ice Walkers as well. Myself, Weimar Lone Grove, and we are all here on behalf of the people of New Zealand.
"Very good," says Lord Brannan. He says, "Well, I'm sure most of you already know why I've called you here." He says, "I've called you here because I wish to express my concerns about what I believe will surely be a mass colonization attempt of Valkonen by Rohaleen come the summer months. It is my belief that those of us," and he gestures around at everyone assembled, "who have bled, who have sweated for what gains we have made here, should not simply be swept aside by those who were unwilling to take the risks alongside us. It is my belief that one of the ways in which we can protect and fortify ourselves, particularly along the southern coast, is to build watchtowers and fortifications along said coasts so that our interests can be protected. I recognise fully that this is a considerable endeavour, especially with the winter coming on, and I also recognise that I cannot alone also reinforce the interior of Valkonen. That is why I've extended an invitation to the representative of Fort Hawk, since they are more well placed to guard the interior of Valkonen, especially if they receive aid from our guests," and he gestures at the shadow of Prospero. The people of Prospero have I suppose an ailment, you might call it, and in return for our aid in resolving this ailment, they have pledged to aid our attempts to protect the gains we've made in Valkonen from outside influences. At which point Captain Boyd says, "Well, yes, this is all very interesting, and it certainly sounds reasonable when you put it like that. Obviously, although I speak for Lord Hawke, he would have the final say on anything I say here, although I do have his authority. I know that my lord is also keen that those from Rohaleen should not simply be allowed to come in and take over what we have struggled to build here. Although we must also be careful that we do not cut off potential trade with Rohaleen. Obviously, when the summer months do come back in and when the waters open up again, trade will definitely be a necessity if we wish to prosper. After all, there are certain things that we do not have in Valkonen that are abundant in Rohaleen." Brannan doesn't say anything, but he nods. Prospero says, "As Lord Brannan has said, we are willing to entertain thoughts of aiding your alliance if in return it will help my people from the the malady that we currently labour under. Lord Brannan has generously offered to use his resources and his considerable knowledge to help us in this regard in return for us aiding his cause and also providing some of our knowledge of the interior of Valconen, since my people have been here since the Great Freeze. And he sits back in his chair with his staff leaning up against himself. So, are you guys saying anything? Are you jumping in?
Trade is going to be a reality, and it should be us doing the trade. It's a powerful alternative, even if at first they try violence. Eventually there's going to be enough keen minds back home
I quite
that
agree.
see the possibility of putting down the sword and changing coin instead.
I quite agree, says Lord Brannan. It is not my intent, I assure you, to be in a war with Rohaleen. It is simply my intent that a strong show of force to discourage violence on their behalf, if we, by showing we are able and capable of defending ourselves, may discourage an outright attempt at a takeover long enough for, as Mr. Lonegrove says, cooler heads to prevail. So you are absolutely right that we cannot cut off trade to Rohaleen, but much as they have resources that we do not, there are also many things present on Valconen that are not present on Rohaleen. So it is only natural that trade will be engaged in. There is, of course, and he sighs a little bit, there is, of course, one other problem, says Lord Brannan. I'm sure you're all aware of the draconic creature that has been flying around the area. It has destroyed a number of isolated farmsteads and is proving to be a particular menace. We can clearly not allow this creature to continue as it is. We can ill afford such a distraction when and if Rohaleen starts to probe our borders. At which point he reaches under the table and he puts on the table what looks to be like a perfectly spherical orb of green glass or crystal. And he says, he taps it and it's like a ding, ding, ding sound as he taps it. I have procured at no small expense this artifact. I believe if we can subdue the beast long enough to use it, this will allow us to bind the creature that we might actually use it in Valconen's defense. I personally would rather not kill such a majestic creature unless absolutely necessary.
What manner of glass is this to bind such a lizard?
He says it is not a glass as such, it is a particular stone. There exists, but forgive me if I am repeating knowledge that you all know here. I'm simply relaying it so that anyone who doesn't might catch up. There are a number of different species of draconic creatures in the world, and for each species there exists but one of these artifacts, these orbs. I have managed to locate the one that would aid in our particular problem, as I've said, at no small expense and resources. It is said, and I'll admit there is still much research to do before this could be used, it is said that someone strong of will who possesses such an orb can use it to bend the will of such a creature to their own. Now, I do not know for sure whether this is true or not, and my people will need to conduct considerable research on this item before we can divine whether we can use it or whether it indeed works. But if it does, we can not only prevent this creature from causing any more havoc and endangering more people, but it would also be a potent weapon for the defence of Valkonen. Not to mention other more mundane possibilities, moving resources, etc. I'm sure you've all seen how quickly the beast can move through the air. Imagine if we were able to harness that to move resources for the building of towers, etc.
This is all very fantastical.
Indeed, and I should point out it is in no small part thanks to the assistance of Prospero here and his people, the gestures of the Shadow Elf, that we have been able to obtain and recover this artifact. So my thanks to you, Prospero. The Shadow Elf nods.
Well, then I suppose we are in the market for a strong-willed individual.
Indeed. As I've said, it is my intention, once we have concluded our researches on the item, and should we believe that it can be used for such a purpose safely for all concerned, then we will of course be looking for volunteers to help test the item. Obviously that will involve a great deal of danger, since even if and again forgive me if I'm talking down to anyone here, I do not mean to, but I'm aware that we have varying degrees of experience with the arcane here. Even if such an item is understood, its function understood and how it technically can be used, there is always a degree of uncertainty with these things. The forces of the arcane do not always work in a predictable and logical manner, so there will be a degree of danger involved in testing it, even after all of our research. But I hope to put out a call for volunteers to help with that testing once we have determined that we can make it as safe as possible, though as I say, it can never be made 100% safe. Would anyone care for some refreshments?
No, thank you.
He looks around the table, the Shadow Elf shakes his head. You see Captain Boyd's like, well, yes, I wouldn't mind a drink of some kind. At which point here, he reaches under the table again. He brings like a little bell and he's like, ding, 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 ding. One of the, you presume like the tower servants, obviously not a guard, but just like a sort of peasant type, comes in. And he's like, oh, could you bring us in a couple of bottles of wine? And he looks like he's about to start to say glasses, and then he's like, and whatever drinking receptacles you have to hand. At which point the peasant says, oh yes, of course, Lord Brennan. He heads out, comes back a few moments later with like a sort of metal tray, puts it down on the table. There's like a couple of bottles of wine and various, pretty much like tin mugs basically. There's no like fluted champagne glasses or anything like that. And he says, well yes, I'm sorry that I can't host you in more luxurious settings, but we have to make do with what we have. And he starts pouring out the wine. He takes a sip himself. Anyone who wants a glass of, like a mug of wine, you can have a mug of wine. It's just a fairly nice red wine. Nothing particularly special about it. But a few moments later, the peasant comes back in. There's like some bread and cheese and whatever. And that's put down on the table as well, and people are like picking at it while they're talking. And he says, at which point he says, tell me, Mr. Lonegrove, have you reached a decision about whether you're willing to accept our offer of becoming the Castellan of the new Sealant Tower? Now that we've agreed to your slight relocation.
Indeed, with certain architectural amendments, we have an accord.
Amendments? Are you referring to the location?
The location of the tower. Yes.
Of course. My apologies. I thought you meant some additional amendments to that.
No.
Yes, I'm quite happy to agree to moving it closer to your village of New Zealand. In fact, I think it's a splendid idea. The point of having these towers, after all, is not only to make a statement to Rowaleen that we are able and capable and willing to defend ourselves if needs be. It is also to reassure the people who dwell here that we stand ready to defend them if they should be threatened. So I think building it closer to your village is a splendid idea.
And let it be known here that we do intend on another tower. We shall have two.
Splendid.
One of our own craft, in addition to the one that we have discussed before here. For we see a great value in the river, and thus we shall place two towers at the river mouth, further to control the access to inland Balconen.
Lord Brannan nods and says, splendid. I think that's an excellent idea. As you say, if we're hoping to eventually encourage trade, we will need to have some sort of regulations. Obviously, travel by river is one of the fastest methods, so I think maintaining a firm grasp on the mouth of the river, so to speak, is a splendid idea.
Now, I would like to place my hand under the table on the pommel of my sword and think at the sword real hard. Now, this is the moment. If you are capable, what is this Lord thinking of?
Okay, you don't receive like a vocal answer from the sword. However,
yeah, thankfully,
he's not just like, well, he's double crossing you.
Yeah, he seems full of shit.
He's talking bullshit. But no, however, you receive a vivid flash of, you see Lord Brannan stood in some sort of, it's obviously like Valconen, but it's like a generic sort of snowy like landscape. You see him stood there. He's holding the green crystal orb that's now on the table in his hands. There seems to be like a wind issuing forth from it, like his hair and his robes are blowing out behind him. You see a number of his soldiers and like other sort of people around this dragon that's lying like, you recognize the frostworm, that's lying like subdued, like spears sticking out of it and like arrows and stuff like that. And you see like a few like indistinct people, like you see like one or like a so they're quite shadowy and vague, as though like the further things get away from you in the scene, the more indistinct they become and the more hazy. You see like a big figure in the background and you're like, oh, is that Brock? It's about the right height for him, but then it sort of like fades into the background and you can't really tell. You see, obviously this dragon has been subdued. You see Lord Brannan step forward and he places the orb against the sort of forehead, I suppose, of this draconic creature. As he does, there's like a blinding flash, and when the flash clears and it's sort of, the after effects fade off your retina, Lord Brannan and the orb have disappeared.
What about the dragon?
The dragon is still lying there on the floor. However, then it begins to move.
The dragon does.
Yeah, you see like a few of the soldiers who are nearby sort of like moving back and they're like, oh, it's getting up, and they're like getting the spears ready and whatever. The dragon sort of like rears up to its full height, opens its mouth, and then in the voice of Lord Brannan, the dragon says, now our real work begins. And then you snap back out of the vision and you're sort of still with your hand on the pommel of your sword under the table.
And I'll probably be blinking because I'm getting flashbanged into my mind's eye.
Yep.
So I'm blinking hard, and I'll reach for like a piece of bread, to just sort of like like occupy myself and be like, oh, maybe I'm feeling a bit woozy. Just get some food in.
You see that Captain Boyd looks over at you and he's like, oh yes, I understand that. He said the cheese is making me a little bit bilious as well. No offence, Lord Brannan. Lord Brannan sort of waves his hand.
Yes, I do. We don't have a lot of cheese in New Zealand.
No, I think
it's mostly fish.
I think I'm getting a bit old for such rich fare, says Captain Boyd. And he like reaches out, he takes a swig of his wine.
Yeah, I'll take a piece of bread, and I'll do that thing where I have the chunk in my hand, and I'll pick like pieces of it and eat it, and meaningfully, sweep the room, lingering on the Lord a couple times as I do.
You see he's got like a big bit of like crusty bread himself, and he like, because it's like a fairly sort of like rock hard like bread, because obviously it's made to like last. That's the main thing. You see him like he like dips it in his wine to like soften it a bit, and then like, pops a bit of this bread into his mouth, and he's chewing it, and he says, "Oh, by the way, I should apologise that my Castellan, Mercy Dixon, isn't here. They had a little trouble around the tower shortly before our arrival, and being the conscientious Castellan that she is, she went to make sure that it was all resolved and wouldn't interfere with our meeting. She passes on her apologies and hopes to be here before the meeting closes."
Wonderful.
At which point, Lord Brannan says, "Now, Prospero, perhaps if you be so kind as to reveal your part in this to our assembled guests. Obviously, I know much of what you're going to say, but just to bring everyone up to speed." At which point, the shadow elf, who every time he speaks, so wisps of shadow come out of this strange like flesh mask he's wearing over his non-face. He says, "Well, yes, some of you," and he like his gaze like falls on you, Weimar. "Some of you have met me before. As you may or may not be aware, my people are some of the original inhabitants of Valconan before the Great Freeze. Many of my people, the wild, as some call us, we were, you might say, blessed with, rather like the Ice Walkers, blessed with the blood of the Senna, although they seem to have forsaken it. But many of my kind, myself included, nurtured the arts that this natural propensity blessed us with. Of course, that is not to say that all of my people were proficient sorcerers, but there was rich potential in many of us. When the Great Freeze was brought about by the hubris of the Senna, although many of our people fled southwards on the great fleets with your ancestors, those of us who chose to remain, we attempted to use our abilities to fortify ourselves against an unsurvivable winter. Even your own," and he looks at Brock and Lan, he says, "even your people, although you did not flee as far south as others, even your people moved south onto the ice floes. We chose to remain, but no one could survive unaided against the great winter. We wove a mighty working that we, perhaps in an echo of the Senna's hubris, believed would preserve us against the winter. It would fortify us against it. However, the working, which was by necessity hastier than we would have liked, had unintended side effects. Those of us who had a strong talent for sorcery, let's call it, for the sake of simplicity, our abilities were much bolstered. However, our physical forms were reduced to what you see now, little more than living shadow. Those of my people who did not possess sorcerer's talents were affected in a similar way, but were reduced to little more than automatons. Eventually, we worked out how to make the masks that allow us to interact with the physical world, but we are, as you see us now, 1 foot in the physical world and 1 foot in elsewhere. It is our desire to find a way to return ourselves to our previous forms whilst maintaining the gifts that were bestowed upon us, and also to return the minds and the hearts of those of our people who were reduced in stature due to not possessing sorceress talents. In return for the generous aid of Lord Brannan in accomplishing this goal, I have agreed to provide your alliance with knowledge of the interior of Valconan and many of its threats and dangers, since we have been here for a long time, and also to help come to the aid of yourselves should this Rohaleen you speak of decide to ignore your great towers and launch an attack. And all we ask in return is your help in undoing the damage that we unwittingly wrought upon ourselves. But first, as a sign of good faith, and he reaches into his cloak and he pulls out what looks to be a sort of roll of some sort of leather with like cord tying it up, and he throws it onto the table and it lands like in front of you guys, just like on the table, this roll of leather with twine around it.
I'm waiting for someone to reach for it.
Well, I'm gonna have to butt in here.
Yeah, go
So
for it.
as this meeting's been going on, Brock is not renowned for being the loudest person, but being this silent for so long, you can see he is slowly bubbling. And after the talk from Lord Brannan, and now from this wispy magic creature that basically attacked us without any sort of any reason, as far as I can tell. Yeah, he's losing it. So as the meeting's going on, he's just, I mean, Weimar will know, he's gripping the sort of the arm of his chair more and more, and it's noticeably making noises. He's gripping it that hard. It's like creaking, and as he gestures this, he's just going to stand up and he's just going to say, "I need some air," and he's just going to storm out. And he's just heard enough that he don't like this at the moment.
Yeah, so Brock shouts he needs some air, he storms out, the door closes with a slam behind him, at which point the Shadow Elf Prospero says, "I apologise if I have caused offence with my simple gift."
I'll reach for the gift to find out what it is.
Okay, you unfurl this rectangular piece of leather, and as you look at it, you can see that sort of drawn sort of fairly sort of expertly on this piece of leather is what appears to be a map of the interior of Valconan.
I'll say, as we're all looking at this now,
I've now revealed the map.
Oh, let me revise that. So, the Great White, is that just glacier, or
What, to the far north?
yeah?
Yes, that's glacier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as we're sort of looking it over, I suppose, like people leaning on the table, maybe I'll mention to our shadow friend that I hope you'll excuse the temperament of certain parties here today. The encounter from which you recall certain parties present here today,
Indeed.
I suppose has soured some tongues.
There is nothing to apologise for. The Ice Walkers' antipathy towards forces that they do not understand is known to us.
I think this is a point, and I'll look around the table, for us all to consider here now. Now, I am a simple man, not of any great talent. During the time here, though, we have had the fortune of meeting with many a knowledgeable individual. We've seen places, we've personally been to places that are weighty in their history. We've learned some things, even such as I have learned things, and it does, from the meager scraps that I have been able to put together and understand, it does seem that we all share a certain commonality here. Even the people in Rohaline, we're all, to an extent, I suppose you would say, we are all children of this place here, and we are all scarred by events long past, having barely any fault of our own, that I can tell, in the formation of said scars. Perhaps your story is different. I do not presume to speak for you, but what I am getting at here is, I think we are all striving ultimately for the same thing, which is a comfortable existence once again on this place that seems to be the home of us all. From my very modest understanding, a footman's understanding, a yeoman's understanding of things.
I believe you are correct, says the Shadow Elf Prospero. We all have a desire to thrive here. I suppose the difference from my story as opposed to yours, although there are many similarities, is that you are talking of events long past that affected your ancestors and those who came before you, whereas I am seeing such events through the lens of memory.
That is true. That's true. My life, such as it is, began on the coast and the plains of far Rohaline, and it is, well, I suppose it is quite the thing to stand here today, and I think that is probably true for all of us in some measure, aside from perhaps your own august personage being, of course, of some rather more advanced age than the rest of us here.
Indeed.
I hope dearly, maybe naively as well, that we could make this work amongst ourselves, because we share this one thing that I think is probably the most vital thing of all.
Indeed, it is my hope that my people can return to something akin to the life we led before the unfortunate state we are in now, and of course in return for Lord Brannon's aid and the assistance of the various other people herein, we are of course prepared to do our part. There are certain places that I suppose you would say are sacred or have an importance to my people on Valkonen. in times gone by when we were more than we are now, we erected monuments in such places where we felt the natural flow of magic, let's call it for simplicity's sake, was strongest. The regrettable incident at Fort Kersey, for which I entirely accept the fault was mine, was because we believed that your people were attempting to destroy one such sacred site, the stone that was present. It is regrettable because perhaps if we had been able to meet as we are now and discuss it calmly, many of the lives of my people and yours could have been preserved. However, and I do not say this as an excuse, I'm perfectly prepared to accept the fault was ours. We have become used to dealing with the challenges of Valkonen, where it seems every creature you come across is almost certainly trying to slay you. When we first encountered your people, being fairly unaware of them, we reacted in the manner we would react to any other natural hazard in Valkonen, where we have learnt that it is better to strike first than wait to be struck. We now recognise that this was an error, and it is hoped by my people that by aiding you in this alliance of yours, we can in some way make amends for this error. At which point Lord Brannan says, well, yes, there's obviously no denying that what happened in Fort Kersey was a tragedy, but personally, I would rather learn from such an event and make sure that it does not happen again. As I say, with Roweline sure to be nipping at our heels come the summer months, we cannot afford to be fighting amongst ourselves when that happens, since if we are divided, it'll be far easier for them to sweep us aside and take what they will, pillaging the wealth of Valkonen, installing their own people, and that sort of thing, and basically taking advantage of all of the hard work, the blood, sweat and the tears that we have put into building this place up into what it is now. And as far as I'm concerned, forgive me if I speak out of turn, as far as I'm concerned, if you are not willing to risk the dangers that all of us here risked in coming to this unknown land, aside from those who lived here, but as you say, even the natives of Valkona, they daily struggle against dangers the like of which are unknown in Roweline. If the people of Roweline were unwilling to face the dangers alongside us, then in my opinion they should not be sharing in the benefits that our blood and toil has won us. At this point, we're going to cut to Brock outside, presumably getting a bit of air.
Huffing about.
Yeah, storming up and down.
Just stomping about outside, yeah.
Okay, so as you're stood outside, you're walking up and down, you see like from out of the forest, you see a group of soldiers wearing like the purple and black livery of Fort Eastburn approaching, and you see Mercy Dixon, the Castellan of Staffstone Tower, sort of with the soldiers. A few of them look like they've got like various like minor wounds on them. There's like they've got like a bit of blood splattered on their like armor and their like clothing. You can see like most of them have got like they're wearing weapons, etc. You can see like there's a couple at the back and they're like dragging one of those sort of like stretchers, like the litters, and there's like one of the guards like lying on it. He appears to be dead.
I'll wander out and see what's happened. 'Cause,
Yeah, you can see they're like obviously heading for the tower. So yeah, you meet them halfway, at which point Mercy Dixon see you can see as you get closer, she's actually got one of her arms in like a sort of makeshift like sling. She sees you approach and she's like, "Oh, Brock, have I missed the meeting?"
it's started. They're still
Oh.
discussing stuff.
Good,
But
good.
I'm
I was hoping to make it back in time.
what seems to have happened? It looks like you've got casualties.
Only the one. Fortunately, it could have been a lot worse. I'm sorry. Sorry, I've taken a few bumps and knocks myself. I can't remember whether it was you or your elven friend I spoke to about this. You're aware that I don't know if you're aware we had a man at the tower who was attacked by a strange creature who was bitten by it.
I think Malcolm mentioned he'd had some encounter.
Yes, that's right. It was Harper, your friend that I spoke to about it. Yes, well, he was attacked by this strange creature that looked like a man but had like teeth like a shark, and it bit one of my men. We dealt with the creature, of course. What we thought we had. Whilst we were preparing to burn it, the creature revived, I suppose you could say. And we pursued it off into the forest. Eventually we caught it up, and at great cost we were able to dispatch it. Following Malcolm's advice, we entirely burnt the body. We scattered the ashes. All of that sort of things that he recommended. And when we came back, the soldier who had been bitten seemed to have entirely recovered. So we thought nothing of it. However, when we came to check on him the next day, we found he was gone. The window of his chambers had been smashed open, and there were tracks leading into the forest. We found one of the servants in the castle slaughtered is the only word I can use for it, in his bedchamber, blood everywhere. In order to prevent potential further infection, we of course burnt the body of the servant, regrettable though it was, scattered his ashes. We've just come back from pursuing the unfortunate soldier in the forest. When we found him, he was very much like the beast that we had slain earlier. As we attacked him, various animals seemed to emerge from the forest and set upon us. A number of them killed my man back there. We were able to dispatch him and again burn his body, scatter the ashes, but most of us took injuries during it.
We encountered a similar creature near New Zealand.
At which point she looks a little bit panicked and she's like, "Did you burn its body?"
We did dispose of the body, but I don't think we burned it. We took its head from its shoulders.
But basically, when you guys previously talked about it, when you killed it, it basically like crumbled to dust.
Yeah, but we didn't do anything else with it. Yeah. And this man that had been bitten, how long was it before he disappeared?
After he'd first been bitten.
After recovery.
After he'd first been bitten, before we went after the creature, he seemed to fall ill and be getting weaker and weaker for must be 2-3 days. And we went out. We thought it was a normal ailment. We went out to hunt down the creature, and then, as I said, when we dispatched it, we returned to find him apparently in the process of recovery. He seemed fine. He was untroubled by any of the strange dreams he'd been having, and we thought, well, perhaps something in killing the creature that had bitten him now it was gone. Perhaps whatever had infected him was gone as well. And then that very evening, we all heard the commotion, but by the time we got to his chambers, he'd gone, and there was just the dead body of the servant.
So before he'd fully recovered, he took a turn for the worse, it seems.
We assume so. Well, like I say, he seemed fine when we'd slain the creature, but obviously we were mistaken. Would that we had known, we might have saved the life of the poor servant.
This is troubling. Okay. Well, I'll allow you to, get back to the tower and rest up and refresh yourselves.
Yes, I've got to make sure my men are all settled in, and we've of course got to bury our fellow here.
I'll go and grab the sledge they made or whatever and take over from the guys dragging it to give them a bit of rest, although it's only a short distance to the tower, but
yeah,
just to show willing.
You start sort of helping him, and they're basically, you see they're doing like a very simple sort of burial for him. She says, luckily he wasn't killed by the creature. It was these animals that came out of the woods. But I'm going to station a guard by his resting place for a few nights, just to be on the safe side.
Sounds wise in the circumstance.
One thing, I tell you, one thing that was odd though, while we were fighting the creature, it went to attack one of my men, and then as it had him dead to rights, it was about to sink its teeth in, and then it seemingly recoiled, almost as though it had been struck, and backed away from him.
And can you think of any reason that might have caused it to?
Well, we've been trying to think about it on the travel back, since obviously if we could work out what it was, we can potentially use it. The only thing I can think is she sort of gestures at the sorry. He's the only thing I can think of. He's a very keen, I suppose, gardener, you say, in his spare time, and recently he's been trying to grow some herbs and whatnot around in some of the slightly more fertile areas around the tower. He's been trying to put some soil in pots to keep them free from the frost, just to provide us with some herbs and a few bits and pieces that we can use during the winter. The only thing I could think that perhaps he was carrying a pouch of some of his stuff that he'd picked during the day. We were hoping to use it to flavour our rations and such, how bland these iron rations can get, but we were hoping to use his herbs and whatnot to flavour it. I can only think it was something in there that repelled the beast. After all, that's the only thing that he was carrying that we weren't. I mean, all the rest of us were carrying our standard campaigning equipment.
Well, I mean, herbs can be very powerful. I use them myself to help cure poisons and such. So I know that they do have some strong, quite potent, some of these herbs in aiding with poison. Would this man be available to just have a quick word to see what herbs he's managed to lay his hands on?
Daniels, come over here. And he comes over and he's like, yes sir, what can I do for you? She's like, oh, show her. This is a friend of mine, Brock, and he gives you a salute. He says, show him what you've got in your herb pouch. And he says, oh, yeah, yes, of course. And he opens up this leather sort of knapsack that he's got strung over his shoulder. He opens it up, shows it to you, and it's a mix of various herbs that have been finely chopped, and but the majority of it sat on top of this layer of herbs are these massive fat bulbs of garlic.
And is this the stuff you had when you had this encounter with this horrible creature?
He says, yes, this is it. He says, aside from a few pinches of this that I used to sort of spice up our rations a little bit on the way back, I've been trying to grow herbs, the garlic, the mint, etc. Just hoping the food we can get around here, especially during the winter months, it's going to be very bland. I was thinking that maybe I used to enjoy a bit of gardening before I came here. I thought maybe I could I could use it to at least sort of give a bit more flavour to our food. But yeah, this is pretty much what I had in. Like I say, aside from a few pinches that were used in our rations on the trip back.
So, I'm fairly good with herbs, so I'll sort of make a mental note of all the sort of different ones he's got,
Yeah, no problems.
so that I can potentially look into getting some myself.
Yeah, that's
to
absolutely
aid us.
fine. But as you say, you've certainly got enough knowledge of herbs with your background and the fact you use herbs for healing, and it's very commonly used amongst the Ice Walker tribe. So yeah, and you can see they're all sort of like fairly like local herbs that have been sort of like grown. Garlic maybe not so common, but you can find it in certain places. And yeah, you make a note of it. You're like, yeah, I recognise all of that.
Yeah.
Just by the smell, you can tell what's in there. So yeah, you make a mental note of that.
Well, yeah, thank you. It could be, quite an important discovery if you've found some way of repelling this creature.
Glad to help, sir. At which point, Mercidic says, "That's fine, Daniels. That'll be all. Tell the men to fall out. Go and get some food. Get some rest. I'm going to go and clean myself up a bit, and then I'm going to head up to the meeting." She turns back to you and says, "Well, as I said to Daniels, I'm going to go and get myself cleaned up and try and catch the end of the meeting." She looks like she's going to say something else, and then she just like cuts herself off and she just nods at you and walks into the tower.
Yeah, I'll give her a nod in acknowledgement, and yeah, I think I'll probably wait outside now for the sort of feedback from the meeting. I don't want it to go on too long because I want to get this news to the rest of the group. So
so
if it goes more than half hour, I might sort of go back in.
Okay, so I tell you what, we'll cut to half an hour later then. There's just been general chit chat going on, etc. Reiterating the points. People talking about what potentially they could do, talking about the building of towers. All the sort of like nitty gritty detail we don't really need to like dwell upon. The exact positioning. Wymar's probably talked about we've actually started like measuring out some of the sites for the towers. So like when you actually send your people, we'll have the measurements for them, and you probably drop in like, who are you planning on sending, by the way? At which point Brandon's like, well, of course we'll have to send stonemasons and carpenters and all the sort of normal craftspeople you accept. There's a distinct absence of him saying like, we will send evil sorcerers to raise towers from the depths of the earth.
Damn it.
The distinct lack of all that. It's just like, carpenters and like stonemasons.
The crafty devil.
That's in small print, that is.
That's it. Yeah, I like to think he's sat there and says, we'll send stonemasons, carpenters, draftspeople, evil sorcerers. What was that last bit? Draftspeople? No, the other bit. But yeah, so the
don't
chat,
sign anything.
The chat's been going on for about like half an hour of all this sort of nitty gritty detail. Obviously, you're still outside, but like say half an hour's passed. You go back into the.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Obviously, we're sort of around about midday now.
Yeah, I mean, is there a guard outside the door?
Yeah, there's a guard outside the door, but obviously they've seen that you've come out and you've been in there, so they'll give like a sort of salute, but they won't stop you from going in.
Okay, yeah, well, I sort of quietly open the door in case we're in the middle of something, and then sort of, obviously, I'll just go back to my seat.
So as you're walking in, Prospero,
the
shadow elf, is saying, and in the spirit of sharing information in our new alliance, was anyone aware that and he says like a word in Elven that no one like understands, and he says, I believe you call it the Witch Isle, has been colonized by an occupying force. Which went everyone around the tables like, no, I don't know that about. He says, yes.
What force would that be?
So I do not have the full details, since I have not travelled there myself. However, we do have eyes that can look a great distance. We believe a human wielding great magics has weaponized the the many bodies of the dead that lie on that place, and has used them to take control of the island. Previously, I believe it was occupied by a ragtag alliance of, and again he says like an elven word that you don't understand, and strange, deformed creatures.
Just to get us all on the same page, the previous occupants, strange, deformed creatures, and
The frost dwarfs, wasn't it?
the kin of the dwarves.
That would be an accurate description.
Yeah, I know. Well, this certainly is notable news.
Indeed, I believe this individual has taken control of the island, and if they have the ability to command the dead, then surely those frost dwarves, as you call them, and whatever deformed creatures are stood against him are now part of his forces.
Would stand to reason.
I would have mentioned this earlier, and I would have deemed it more urgent, save that the forces occupying the island seem to have made no move to step beyond the bounds of the island itself. You see like Brannon frowning as he's sort of contemplating this. He's like, well, I can't say I like the thought of a potentially hostile force lurking within our own borders, especially not on a defensible location like the Witch Isle. I mean, they're not hostile for now, but weeks, months, years down the line, who knows? I can't say I've had any personal dealings with these frost dwarves or these other people on the island, but the simply moving in and slaying the people on the island doesn't bode well for the forces that now occupy it.
Well, I think that will enter close to the top of the priority list of problems to deal with.
Indeed, and as this is going on, Brock comes walking back in and like catches that. Presumably you sit down again, Brock.
Yeah, I'm going to sit next to Weimar if I can, or
Yeah.
close enough. And as they sort of continue to talk, I'm just going to whisper and say, I need to have a word in private.
I'll say, excuse me, I will.
At which point Lord Brandon sort of holds up his hand and he says, I think this might be a good place to have a slight recess from the meeting. Obviously a lot of weighty matters are being discussed here. I suggest we all have 5 minutes to clear our heads, take in some fresh air, and then we return to the table and we carry on anew. At which point people are nodding and they're sort of like getting up, and people are sort of filing out, doing their own thing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if that's the case, then I'll take our little group to one side.
Mm-hmm.
The four of us. And I'll say, I've just spoken to, is it Captain Dixon?
Technically it's Castellan Dixon, but
Oh, all right, yeah.
she's several times said, like, my name's Mercy Dixon, you can just call me Mercy Dixon, it's fine.
Okay,
I'm not
Mercy
bothered.
Dixon, yeah. I just ran into Mercy Dixon outside, and they've just returned from fighting what sounds like a creature similar to the one that we dispatched a few days ago that bit Malcolm. But the worrying thing was that one of their soldiers was bitten, seemed to be making a recovery, then not 1 or 2 days later still succumbed to the curse, or they assumed the curse because it attacked somebody else and sort of went on the rampage until they disposed of it. So I'm now fear that the man that we returned to the village could do a similar thing. and New Zealand could be in danger.
So it came back.
So basically, someone was bitten. They killed the creature that originally bit the person, and they started to make a recovery. And they thought, oh, it's the curse has been lifted. But then, like a day later, it turned into one of these creatures still, and basically turned into the same thing, which sounds similar to what happened to us when we returned. He was seeming to get better, that guy. So I'm just concerned that
It's the same kind of thing that bit Malcolm.
yeah, well, the description seems similar from what I could get from the soldiers.
It's a very real possibility then that Malcolm could become one of these things.
He didn't seem to have the same sort of illness that the guy at the village did, but it is still a potential, yeah. And they have seem to have found some sort of repellent, one of these herbs that they've collected, and I'll list off all the different herbs that they had.
Yeah, Brock reels off like a list of herbs. Obviously, he's using like Ice Walker, like local names for them. So it wouldn't just be like, sage, rosemary, like mint. It'd be like whatever the Ice Walkers call them. So
Yeah.
a lot of them you won't recognise. But obviously, Brock seems to like know exactly what these herbs are. And obviously, you guys know that as a local, his people use a lot of herbal medicines because they're not down with the magic.
I mean, even these herbs could somehow reverse the curse, or this, I don't know, the turning, or whatever we want to call it, or at least protect people from it, or we could use it against these creatures if we run across them again.
Could we not put bags of those herbs in people's houses?
Yeah, if we can. Yeah, once we get back and collect up enough of them, we can. Yeah, certainly do something to try and protect people of the village. But I'm just concerned that there could be one of these creatures running about now or in the very near future while we sit here discussing how this Lord is going to become all powerful.
Well, I think we all gathered that as the gist of the meeting, but we still need to finish hearing him out. Somebody needs to finish hearing him out. We can't just up and leave because they'll take offence.
Well, that is obviously a decision I will leave with you and Weimar. But I think it's clear that they mean to control this creature, and once they have control of that creature, I feel we have little to no hope.
That's why we should volunteer to try and control the creature. At least then we can smash the bloody orb.
Or rid ourselves of this Lord once and for all. But you're probably right. We should at least hear what they've got to say. Although they've probably said most of it.
I think they've said most of it, then repeated most of it, and then repeated most of it again. We're just waiting for them to start falling asleep now.
And the witch isle, that sounds like this. Was it a knight or someone who may have got his hands on this evil sword that we had rumors of?
Well, we do know who has the sword. It is a bruiser that we had around in New Zealand
From the past.
Yeah. The Witch Isle is the sort of burial site of several sort of old solar religion knights from all the way back before the Ice Age.
Yeah, you and Malcolm have told me of some of your tales of the Witch Isle.
And these spirits were restless. So I don't if there's someone there who can actually raise the dead, I think it will be a very, very, very difficult endeavor if they can also command these knights that have been laid to rest there. Their tombs are there, so they will have access to the tombs if they control the Isle. And if they can bring those knights to bear as well, I don't know that we have anything on Valconen that can stop that.
Apart from maybe this flying beast.
Yeah.
Or the shadow people.
That is true. That is true. That is a good point, Quentin.
But are there many of those shadow people left?
I would imagine that when we encountered them, their defeat was temporary. I think what they seem to imply is they are only able to be touched because of the masks. Yeah. And once we break the masks, I presume they revert back to whatever smoke that they usually are. So I'm actually not sure that we've successfully slain any of them. Could be that we just broke some masks. But that is true, Quentin. That is a good point. We should, if we run into these knights, the best option is probably getting some of these ones to help at that point. I mean, we have this, and I pat the sword.
Well, I assume it's in their best interest that the dead aren't walking around.
I would suppose so. They seem also invested in, well, continuing to be here. So I guess they would be interested in that.
We're a busy little town, aren't we?
It seems that there are, just as I was hoping we could have the winter for ourselves, fires are springing up again.
There's many enemies on the doorstep.
Yeah.
Even if they say they're not enemies. I don't trust any of them.
So, are we still interested in heading to...
We're still interested. We continue doing as we're doing, I think. We volunteer ourselves to go and try and get this dragon thing that Malcolm's interested in.
As you're saying that, Weimar, in your head, you hear like a...
I think at it, yes.
Are you going to tell them about the orb?
I wasn't going to here, where there are several pairs of ears that should perhaps remain ignorant.
No, fair point. Well made.
After we depart from the radius of said ears, yes, that will be the first thing that we will discuss.
Yes, again, in your head, you hear the voice saying, yes, sorry about that. That's the one of the downsides about being a weapon. Sometimes the subtleties escape me, I've got to admit. Yes, good call, Weimar, good call.
We have our strengths. You have a very keen edge.
Yes.
And I do appreciate that.
Sorry for interrupting. I'll let you get on with it.
So Weimar is just like frozen, staring into a point in the ground for a bit, and is sorry, I had to have a discussion just then.
Well, let's get this meeting over as quickly as we can then, because I'm keen to return to New Zealand.
Yes, quite. And I suppose we'll file back in.
Okay. And I'm going to suggest at this point we actually have like a real life 10-minute break, use the facilities, refresh your drinks, etc. And then when we come back, it'll just be like quickly sort of wrapping up the meeting, and you guys can decide what you want to do next.
Yep.
So we'll be back in 10.
Cool. Mm-mm. How are you feeling, John?
Still feeling pretty rough, I'm not going to lie. But, getting there.
It's just like a coldy thing, or
Yeah, it's just like a cold. Like my head's all sort of like congested, and
yeah.
I've been having like problems with like my stomach basically. But, it is what it is. I mean, it's cold and flu season, isn't it? So
Yeah, at least you've been able to sort of stay at home
that's
anyway,
it, yeah.
which is a bit of a relief.
Yeah, I mean, my temperature's been like all over the place the last week, so it is what it is. You know, I'm just glad it's not anything more serious. So, right, okay, we've got everyone back. So, as you guys head back into the meeting is pretty much drawing to a close. So we'll skim over the end of it. Basically, Brannon's saying, yeah, they'll get people out to start surveying and making the preparations for building the tower at New Zealand. He says it's probably going to take at least a couple of months to complete the construction, because obviously trying to get all the raw materials in winter's not ideal. And so there's not like vast armies of like qualified draftspeople, etc. in Valkona. So he says it's probably going to take a couple of months. But he says as soon as the meeting's finished and he's dealt with a few other matters, he'll send the people over to New Zealand to like have a look at the measurements that you guys have been taking, you know, start the construction, etc. So we'll get that underway. It's revealed that the Prospero's people, the shadow creatures, are going to be helping with the research into this like strange orb. They don't know how long that's going to take, but he basically says he'll keep all concerned parties up to date on like their research, and when that's finished, they're going to call for volunteers. The captain from Fort Hawk reveals that his lord effectively is currently attempting to sound out whether a ruined castle to the west of Fort Hawk is potentially recoverable, and whether that can be used as like another sort of stronghold to help protect the interior of Valkonen. Obviously there may be dangers there, but he says that Lord Carabas Hawk is hoping to reclaim that, and obviously again he exchanges promises to like keep everyone as up to date as he can with like what's going on with that. At the very end, Mercy Dixon comes in. She like confers a bit quietly with Lord Brannon, and he sort of welcomes her to the meeting. She sits down. He very quickly summarises what's occurred for her, and she doesn't say a great deal. She just says she apologises to everyone. You know, there were some matters they had to deal with, etc. And the meeting slowly starts drawing to a close. is there anything you guys want to say in like the closing stages of the meeting, or anything you want to because people are like filing out and sort of going their separate ways, but you can see there's a few people, you know, sort of people are like catching each other and like having quiet words with each other and stuff like that. So if there's any of the people you want to like speak with individually before like everyone disperses, you've got the opportunity to do that. But obviously that's down to you guys entirely.
Right.
I think I'll ambush the Shadow Elf.
Okay, yeah, as you you see Prospero like walking out of the tower, you can see there's a couple of the guards with the staffs and like the sort of stone masks covering their faces that he appears to be like walking towards. Presumably his like guard, for want of a better term.
So I'll hold up a hand and say, I would like to thank you for bringing up the situation in Wish Isle. And I would also further in that line of thinking, I would like to ask for lack of understanding. I'm not aware, if you are aware, that there are spirits of the restless dead on the Witch Isle, in more than just flesh, in spirit as well.
You speak of the guards of the ancient Senate, do you not?
Yes, the knights. If they were to bring their ghostly blades into the service of whoever is on the Isle now, would you be able to stand against them with your craft?
It is possible, yes.
For I do think that if whoever is on the Isle right now is able to sway those knights, their spirits, into their service, I doubt there will be many things on Valconan that can thwart their advance.
Well, as we have said, we are prepared to do our parts for this new alliance. If we were called upon to help with the situation on the island, we would do so to the best of our abilities. My only concern is I sense an item of great power within the bounds of the Witch Isle, and I do not speak of the ancient lodestone that is situated there.
Oh.
I believe one of the three great blades now rests upon the island, much as one is now here.
I nod. You think that one will have the power to raise the dead?
It is possible. The three blades, although one of them has been missing for many, many years, but the three blades are extremely powerful. They are more limited by the capacity of their wielder than by the item itself. It would depend on how the wielder of the... I'm sorry, I do not know the name of it in your tongue. And he says like an elven word.
Mm-hmm.
He says, if the wielder has managed to unlock the powers of this blade, then it is certainly conceivable that it could be used to control the dead, much as your own blade can be used to repel them and lay them to rest. The blade that I believe rests there is the equal and opposite number of yours. It is a dark mirror of your own, if you will.
Right, well, with your leave, we will be contacting you if and when it is time to strike.
Of course, we are still currently occupying the building that you knew as Fort Kersey. If you have need of us, we can be reached there. If you encounter any of our guards, use my name when you come to the fortress, and you will not be harmed.
Did we get? Sorry, I might have forgotten. Did we get like an
Prospero.
elven? Yeah. So we didn't get the like actual like elven. Yeah. So, okay.
You think
right.
he's basically given you like a nickname which like you
Yeah.
guys will be able to pronounce?
Yeah. It's basically like, yeah, you can call me this because you know that's not gonna work if I give you the proper one. So yeah, I'll nod and I'll extend my hands like, well, Prospero.
He extends his shadowy hand, and as you sort of shake hands, you feel like a sort of slightly like numbing cold like seep into your skin as his like gauzy, shadowy like flesh in inverted commas makes contact with your own. But he shakes your hand and then withdraws, and you feel like the cold fade as he withdraws his hand.
Well, I hope this will have a pleasant ending for us all.
As do I. My primary concern is, and always will be, the well-being of my people. As I am sure it is the same for you.
Did we strike down your people?
No.
I nod.
As I said in the meeting, and he gestures at the sort of like flesh mask that he's wearing. He says these masks are a way for us to be able to interact with the world. Without them, we are formless. We are merest shadows. However, the crafting of these items is a long and involved process. So whilst you have not destroyed any of my kind, it will take us some time to rebuild the necessary items for them to be whole, or as whole as my people can be again. But I do not say this in anger. As I said in the meeting, I understand the fault was ours, and you were merely doing what you thought was right to protect your people.
I hope in the future we will have a greater understanding.
Indeed.
And avoid these things.
That is my hope also. Again, allow me to express my regret for what happened at Fort Kersey. Were it possible for me to restore your people, as eventually we will be able to restore my own, I would do so.
Yes, well, I think it is... If you would ask my people, I think a good number of them would prefer not to be restored. It tends to go bad, and it is what we will have to deal with on the Witch Isle. I think.
Indeed.
I think,
as we have learnt with our current situation, whilst we have gained much, what we have lost is far, far greater.
well, we will make the best of what we have.
Yes.
We will be, we will be contacting you when the need arises.
Very well.
And then I'll, let him pass.
Yeah, he basically falls into like lockstep with his guard. He doesn't like say anything to his guards. He just walks between them, and as he does, they just like fall in with him and start like walking away.
Mm-hmm.
Almost as though like they just knew what he wanted him to do, and they just like fall in lockstep and walk off.
Rocket just spend the next 5 minutes shaking his head.
This is muttering there.
Yeah.
Growling and grunting, and he's gone through 3 tongues today. He's bit him so hard.
Okay, so does anyone else want to talk to anyone else?
I'm going to see if I can rustle up any herbs from the kitchen of this place for our journey back.
Yeah, roll me
as much as I can.
Roll me a d4.
I'll just try and persuade them to give us anything that might be on that list. I've got a 1.
okay, they've not got much because most of it they're sort of like putting into their stores. But the like one of the servants in the kitchen, he sort of obviously recognises you as like you're a visiting dignitary as far as they're concerned, and he says, "Oh well, I can give you this, sir. We haven't got much to spare, but," and he hands you like a sort of like basically like a string of like garlic bulbs, and he's like that. If that's any use to you, sir, he's like, "You're welcome to that."
Yeah, anything is gratefully received. Thank you, my good man.
There you go, and I shall add a dose of garlic to your carrot sheet. There you go. Okay, so what's next, guys?
I think we want to head back, don't we?
I think there's two things. Yeah, we need to go back, and we need to try and weaponize these herbs.
Yeah, I mean, on the way back, I'm going to try and collect some, if possible. I'm going to try and sort of jog ahead of the group, looking for any likely signs of any of these herbs on my list, and just keep, sort of doing that ahead of the cart.
Okay, so you're effectively foraging.
Yeah.
So,
Unfortunately, it'd be while moving sort of thing, but
yeah, so it's opportunistic. So for your first day of travel, obviously you will make camp, you'll do your various watches, etc. Anyone who's down hit points can recover D3 hit points. You all need to eat a ration, and Brock, you can make a D6 roll. If you get a 1 or a 2, you manage to find some herbs.
I've got
Unless you've got an ability that affects.
yeah. I'll just roll that one. Oh, it's 1 in 6, isn't it?
No, it's 1 or 2 in 6, because if you have a friar or a barbarian in the group. So you've succeeded.
Well, I thought it was when you're moving, it made it sort of less likely. Wasn't that the...
Yeah, if you're dedicated to foraging, it's
5 and 6.
Yeah, exactly.
Four and
You're almost guaranteed to find something that's dedicated, whereas it's a 1 or a 2. I don't know. It's set up for the default of like 1 in D6 for you, but that's just basically it's a 1 in 6 chance base if you don't have a friar or a barbarian.
Oh, I'll change that to a 2 just so when I roll it in future. Yep. Cool.
Okay, so let me just bring up my table of herbage. We'll see what we do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to find sort of natural herbs that is on my list, but obviously.
Yep, no problems. Okay, roll me a d20.
D20, yep. That is a 3.
Okay. So, as you are searching, you come across effectively like a small sort of partially frozen pool of water, but it's slightly sheltered by the trees, so it's not fully frozen. And round the sort of edges and in the shallows of the water, you find a herb known as bosun's balm in the common sort of parlance. You know that basically amongst the ice walkers, like when you sort of like you have your breakfast, for want of a better term, if you like put this herb in it, it's supposed to like sort of like stimulate you and sort of like give you like a boost of energy in like early morning, like get you going. And I will drop a dose of that onto your carrot sheet. There we go. And basically, it's pretty much a sort of like natural stimulant. So if you're like feeling tired or you're like fatigued, if you eat that, you can use it to sort of like temporarily. I mean, if you just kept bolting it down, eventually like the fatigue would get you. But temporarily, you can use it to like mitigate the effects of like fatigue and tiredness. Like if you were like, oh, I've been on watch for like hours this evening, oh, but someone else is like ill, so they can't do that. Watch, I need to do a second one, but I'm really tired. You could like bang some of that down you, and it'll keep you going like temporarily.
Cool.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a quick. Since you're travelling back, I'm gonna make a quick cheeky random encounter roll as well. You know me, I love some random encounters. Okay, random encounters.
Is there a herb seller on that random encounter list? Trader. Traveling.
Okay, so as you're travelling back and it starts getting into like the evening, you notice that the snowfall has actually like lessened slightly. The winds died down a little bit. There's still snow coming down, but it's not like the massive flurries now. It's more like a light sprinkling, which is obviously, and the wind chills lessened a lot, so it doesn't feel quite as cold and uncomfortable. So you've got like a momentary respite from the biting cold. You all set up camp in the Whale Song Woods. Obviously, you're sort of roughly going in the direction of the Mage Tower ruins again, but you can skirt them or not as you see fit. You set up camp. You all keep watches. The rest of the evening passes uneventfully. Next, obviously, D3 back again, eat a ration, etc. You know the drill. Next day, you carry on moving eastward through the Whale Song Woods. You're passing through the boundaries of the ruins of Castlemaine. You just beyond it, you can see the frozen expanse of the river. Obviously, as we said previously, there's bits of like wood and ruined stone buildings sticking up out of the snow, etc. that you passed on the way there. And as you continue to move, the break, the first thought was probably like a quick break in the weather. It continues to get milder, which is a little bit odd, because obviously you're heading into like the winter. But after a few hours of travel, the snowfall actually stops.
Cool. Can I again take the opportunity to do a little bit of foraging
You
on the
can
way?
indeed. Roll a d6, 1 or 2 again.
Oh, he's done it again.
You're a herb master. Okay, roll a d20 again.
He's very focused today. 18.
Okay, so as you're moving just onto the outskirts of the Whale Song Woods, you're heading. You see the trees have started to thin. You know, you're getting near to the edge of it. As you start heading out of it, you're looking around, like say, on the lookout for any herbs and anything that might be useful. And as you glance up at one of the trees on the very outskirts, you see high up in the branches of this thin, sort of flexible pine tree what appear to be these small violet coloured like oyster mushrooms or funguses sort of growing along the branch, and you recognize these as what are called witches' oysters. Now, despite the sort of inflammatory name, you know that amongst like the shamans of your people, when they like want to have visions and stuff like that, they effectively boil these mushrooms in water, and they drink this soup that results from it, and it helps them get into like these visionary trances that can like last for like hours, and they always seem to wake up from it with some sort of like insight into whatever they're currently pondering or whatever their current issue is.
It's similar to a old Dovey type concoction.
Yeah, it's a similar sort of thing, although like I say, rather than like you sit down and smoke all day, but you ponder for a bit, and then you're like, oh, I've had an idea, like maybe we can try this. With this, it's like full bore, like, right, you are in some like weird like vision trance for like hours, and then when you eventually come like completely unaware of your surroundings and what's really going on in the real world, but when you come round from it, sometimes, not all the time, you'll have this sort of like flash of insight. It may not always be true. I mean, there's false visions, but it's widely used amongst like the shamans of the ice walkers.
Only to be used in a controlled environment.
Yeah, pretty much. And like I say, you can see them like on the high branches of this tree, and that's sort of where they're almost like a parasitical fungus that grows like high up on branches of trees.
Well, yeah, I'll certainly attempt to grab them down or climb up and cut them free.
Yeah, that's not a problem. You shin up the tree, and you cut a few of these witch's oyster mushrooms off the tree. I've dropped some onto your character sheet.
Cool.
Okay, so does anyone else want to do anything during that day of travel? Obviously, we know that Brock's getting his shroom on. For vision purposes.
Yeah.
Just looking out for assassins.
Yeah.
Roll me a d6. Okay. As like I say, you're pretty much heading back in the direction you guys came. So, and because like the snow has stopped, you can actually see like the tracks that you guys made when you were originally heading the other way, because you're pretty much taking exactly the same route back. And you don't notice any like assassins hiding in the bushes or anything. However, you do notice that after a bit, like a set of tracks that you don't recognize, human-looking tracks that you don't recognize, sort of joins your tracks and seems to be like following alongside them. And obviously you don't remember like seeing anyone following you, so presumably they were like following sometime afterwards.
We could be being followed. I mean, you're more of a tracker than I am, Brock, so...
Yeah, I mean that's Mr. Harp, really. I'm a forager and hunter, but
Oh, hunting's a kind of tracking, surely.
yes, I think it would assist slightly, but if they're following us now, obviously we ain't going to see those tracks unless we stop or delay in some way and try and lay some sort of ambush or take cover. Or do we push on? Was it just the one set of footsteps
It seemed to
you
be,
can
yeah.
make out? Which is similar to last time, wasn't it? There's only one.
Just push on and be wary, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you can keep your eyes peeled for any other signs on the rest of the journey, then that would be most useful.
Not a problem.
Okay, so you guys know you've obviously got one more day's travel effectively, and then you'll be at New Zealand. So obviously again, D3 hit points back, eat a ration, standard stuff for travel. And on the third day you cross the frozen river and you see New Zealand in the distance. And I will move you on onto the New Zealand map. Just give me a moment. Obviously now I've got to turn off the snow on the New Zealand map. hoping it'll bring you guys over onto the map soon.
Yeah, it's loading.
Cool.
I don't like what I'm seeing here.
Now, before any of you panic when you see the map, I'll point out that like the big fiery icons on the map aren't actually fires that are burning at the moment. It's like signs that there was fire there. It's just like it's easier to see on the map if I just put a fire icon on there. So there's not actually like fires blazing everywhere. It's just that as you approach New Zealand, obviously you can see Robert, one of the guards, on the bridge, and you can see sort of like where there's those fire icons. You can see like scorch marks and stuff like that. Obviously you don't really need to move your figures on the map because you can wander about. No one's going to stop you. As you head into the village, you can see that there's a few of the guards knocking about. Some of them have wounds on them. You can see there's a couple of guards sort of seemingly standing by 3 dead. I mean, these are the guards from like Eastburn that they sent over, standing around like 3 dead bodies that are sort of piled up. You can also see that the guardhouse at the far end on the east in the wall appears to have like basically been like burnt down to the ground. There's just like charred like timbers and stuff like that. You can see your best buddy Brock, Clarence, the guy you were like arm wrestling. You can see him and like 2 of the Eastburn soldiers. They're like picking through the burnt down like wreckage of the guardhouse. What do you guys want to do?
So everything looks like it's sort of done and whatever's happened is finished. But okay, well, I'm going to head towards this Robert on the bridge and find out what's happened.
Okay, you walk up to him and you can see like he's got a few minor cuts and bruises on him, but like nothing serious. As you approach, you see sort of like as he sees you coming, he sort of like jumps as though he's like ready to like go. And then when he like sees it's you guys, he sort of like obviously recognises you, like sighs in relief, and he like puts his sword away and he's like, oh sorry about that. We're on high alert.
What the hell's happened here?
He says, oh yeah, it was a nasty business. He says, you know that fellow was that sick fellow. Well, must have been not a day after you left. Well, unfortunately, he passed away, I suppose you could call it. And before we knew what was happening, we thought he'd passed away. Before we knew what was happening, he attacked young Sally, who was ministering to him, and he disappeared off into the woods. Your man Harp took some of the soldiers and went after him. We've not seen him since. Whilst we were trying to get ourselves together, Sally comes running out of the building, and it was all chaos. I mean, it was night time. It was all dark. It was like lots of shouting. She came out, and if she didn't start jumping on some of the guards and attacking them, so we had to put her down. And as if that wasn't enough, while we were dealing with that, another, I don't even know what it was, pale thing with big teeth appeared. It started. Cotton went to fight it. I don't know what happened. Maybe a lamp got knocked over or something like that. But before we knew what was going on, the guardhouse was ablaze. Obviously, Clarence and some of the guards went over there to try and put it out. Last we saw a Cotton, the thing was dragging him off into the woods.
When did this all take place?
Like I say, about it must be a day after you left.
Just a couple of days back.
He says we would have sent. I mean, obviously we'd already sent some people with your man Harp. We didn't really have anyone to spare. The rest of us have all been just trying to prepare ourselves in case whatever it was came back.
Are any of the men or anybody in the village, have any of them been bitten by this creature?
He says no, I don't think so. Whilst we were on the tap of that thing, I mean, I think we could have fended it off if it was just them, but we got attacked by those bloody wolves again, and I think the 3 men that went down, I think were taken down by the wolves. They came in through the through the ruins of the guardhouse, and it was all we could do to fend them off. But obviously, with what happened with Seth and with Sally, there's a couple of the guards standing watch over their bodies. We've not had time to take them outside the walls and bury them yet.
Burn them.
Robert nods and he's like, "Yeah, probably a good idea. I'll let the guards know." He says, weird thing is, he says, obviously as you know, I tend to do a lot of stints on the bridge, like guarding the bridge in, and well, I stayed here while most of the others went to aid with the wolves, thinking, they might come across the bridge and try and get us from both sides. Not a thing. Didn't come across the bridge at all. Which I thought was strange, because I'd have thought, if you're trying to really like lay into us, I mean, there's the walls over there, there's the guards, etc. I'd have thought the bridge would have been the easiest way to attack, but apparently not.
Yeah, these creatures you talk of with the sharp teeth, they seem to have some sort of control over wolves. So
he says, yeah. When the creature came out of the woods and attacked Cotton, it was as it laid into him, and we went to go and defend. Suddenly, these, well, like those giant wolves that attacked us previously, a load of them came surging out of the forest, and try as we might, we couldn't get through them to get to Cotton in time. And like I say, last I saw of him, from what I hear from Clarence, the thing dragged Cotton off into the woods, and we've not seen him since. I know your man Harp said he'd wouldn't say track down the creature, they'd try and find him, but we've not seen anything of him since he left with some of the guards.
So I'll try and get a good sense of which woods they were going towards, get a good idea of the direction, so we can try and...
He points to the northeast into like the Wolf Forest.
Yeah, try and track them as best as possible. So I'm going to spend the next few minutes just wandering around and just checking everybody for any sort of bites. Anyone that looks like they've been involved in combat injuries.
There are people who have injuries, but they're mostly seem to be like animal bites you expect from these like wolves that attacked.
Yeah, I just want to double check everyone that looks like they're injured, just to be on the safe side.
You're talking to one of the guards, and he's basically showing you like he's got like a wolf bite mark on his arm, and he's like, I tell you what, when that woman came out of the longhouse, I thought we were gonna, but luckily when she first came out, there seemed to still be a bit of daylight, and although she was all right moving in the building, she didn't seem to want to step outside of it into the light. We were able to like keep her confined in there, but as it started getting darker, she burst through our defences and came out. Took a number of us to take her down. I mean, she was only a slight little thing, but I mean, she had the strength of a demon.
Interesting. I'll keep on your guard, certainly. We'll try and get to the bottom of this.
He says, "Yeah, well, we've all been on high alert. I mean, like I said, we've not got it with Malcolm's taken some of the people. We've not got any people to spare, really. But we're trying to circle the wagons, so to speak."
Yeah. Well, you've done the best you can, and you've at least kept the rest of the village safe.
He says, "Yeah, I just wish it wasn't too late for those poor sods." He says, and he like jerks a thumb at like the sort of 3 like bodies that have been laid out, and they've got like sacks sort of like put over their faces to like cover them. So still, it could have been a lot worse. We could have lost a lot more people.
Indeed. So I'll turn back to the rest of the group, or return back to the rest of the group once I've checked these wounded.
Yep.
What are we thinking? I mean, we've got to give chase, surely. After Cotton and
burn those bodies
Malcolm.
first.
Well, we can leave that We can leave instructions for the guys to do that. I'm sure they're capable of burning the bodies. We need to try and find Malcolm and Cotton, or what's left of them.
Yeah. So let's get people to torch the bodies and go.
Yeah, that's not a problem when you're like, you guys are basically like, look, we need you to burn these bodies. Like, what happened before might happen again. They're like, yeah. And they're like, mate with a torch, and they don't even argue.
Yeah, I'll actually say to Josiah that we're not using the graveyard anymore. Now on, it's only cremations.
He nods as well. Well, if you think that's best.
Yeah, it definitely is. You remember that thing with the witch owl?
Oh, Lord, yes.
There's something on the witch owl again.
At which point that seems to like spur him into action, and he's like, you men there, get some torches, get them on those bodies. Like he goes from like, oh, you sure we should burn them? And you're like, remember the witch owl? And he's like, burn those bodies, burn those bodies.
Already burnt.
Yeah, I mean, you can still have a little stone or a cross or something to remember people, can't you? But
Yeah. He basically says, oh, what they'll do is in the graveyard they'll just put like a little marker with like their name on it or whatever.
Yeah.
So like they can still be remembered, but like obviously he's not. He wants to remember like the fallen and honour them, but he doesn't want to do it in a way that's potentially gonna like end up with more people being killed.
We'll I think we'll put up when we have the time, and it's safe to do so. We'll put up like a big standing stone type deal.
Well, you can actually see if you look on the map. Here, the statue I've put in there, that is to represent the shrine to the judge that Malcolm built in the town, and it's just like a very simple sort of like statue with like a little, almost like a little mini altar, I suppose you might call it, like a little shrine. And you can see that like a few, as I mentioned previously to Malcolm in the last session, a few of the villagers have actually left like little like, offerings around it.
Yeah, I was thinking it would be like whether we add that to the shrine or put it elsewhere. We could have a sort of standing monument, because I don't think even going forward we're going to want bodies in the ground next to our village, just on the off chance that the third guy that turns up and call the dead will pick up the corpses right from our doorstep.
True.
And go to town. So I think like the policy moving forward, like cremations, and then we'll erect like these stones of the deceased. So we'll put up like a standing stone type deal, or whatever stone we can get, and we'll cover that in deceased New Zealanders, and
Founders. Call them founders.
yeah. And and add more stones as we go if we get that far, like generations
like
down
a
the
little
line.
memorial like stone garden sort of thing.
That's
pretty
but
cool.
like tall rocks, so that it's kind of like it's not just piles of stones on the ground, but like more about the I guess a garden, like have like these installations almost of stone there.
Nice.
With the names carved on it, yeah. So I'll mention this to Josiah, but maybe he's
Yeah, you turn around and like, you see Josiah like in the distance like waving. He's like, get those bodies, man. He's gone from like like you remember him last time when you mentioned cremation. He was like, I follow Leander. I'm not really sure about cremation. And then you're like, do you remember when those people came back from the dead and like killed a load of fools last time? And he's like, burn those bodies. He just like
in the name
flips.
of Leander.
Yeah, basically. He's like, don't get me wrong, I love Leander, but like I love not getting murdered in my bed more.
Yeah, I love not losing the entire village to the undead. So.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, that's something for the future.
You probably see him walking out of town with a shovel heading towards the graveyard.
That's it. With like a paraffin lamp. But yeah,
Yeah.
we can assume that you've like mentioned that to him,
Yeah.
and he'll be all on board for that because you're combining his love of like honouring the dead, but also keeping the village safe. So he's well on board with that.
Yep.
He even actually suggests, because I'm presuming at some point you guys are going to mention that, like you mentioned like the tower and stuff to him. He even suggests, what if the tower's being built to like protect the village, and these people have been like, have sort of like sold their lives protecting the village, perhaps like their names could be like inscribed on the tower or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then that's like, it's almost like they're still helping to like protect the village in the form of the tower.
Yeah. Their lives are still there, standing guard
Yep.
over the village and the river mouth. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, for sure. But let's not be in a hurry to fill any of these stones with names. But yeah, do we have a track to follow with, our quarry in the forest? Brock, what was the situation here?
Well, I guess like one of the guards was saying, they went off in the northeast, back into the woods.
Right.
So I think that's definitely our
Right.
first
That's
point of call.
because
That's
I don't know why it took this long. But when the dire wolves attacked, that was one of the monsters, wasn't it? It just stayed in the woods, sent the wolves here. You remember last time when the wolves came over the wall?
Well, that was the only session I haven't been here when the wolves attacked.
That is the only session that I did not exist in.
Yeah.
But
I had
yeah,
a long sleep in that night, that day.
Yeah, they came over the wall.
yeah. And that was, I thought, uncharacteristic at the time. But now we know.
Yeah, they're summoning them.
Yeah. It just stayed in the woods, probing our defenses. Yeah. How did I not see it before? Anyway. Shall we tread into the forest?
By the time like all this chatting and talking to people and whatever, the day's getting on a bit. We're sort of into like late afternoon, early evening. Are you guys heading out in the evening? Are you heading out the next day? What are you planning to do?
Judging by the information of the woman staying in the long cabin during the day, it may be safe to try and track Malcolm in the day rather than encountering the original one plus another two.
It does depend how far. How far did it take us to get to the last run-in with the...
It is a couple of days.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes, it's a bit of a journey anyway.
We're facing 3, potentially 4 if it's got to Malcolm, plus wolves invading light.
If it's going to take us a couple of days to get there anyway, we don't know what time we're going to encounter them, whether it be daylight or night time. I assume it's going to be virtually impossible to track them at night, is it, John?
It's certainly going to be very difficult.
Because I ain't really a specific tracker, so I guess we're going to have to rest up tonight and set off first thing, are we?
It's the same choice.
Okay, so you guys bed down for the evening. Obviously, again, D3 hit points. You don't have to consume a ration because you'll be able to get food in New Zealand. So you settle down in one of the long houses. I'm assuming you all kip in the same long house.
Yep.
Okay, so you all drift off to sleep. Okay, at this point, Brock and Quentin, can you roll me a d6?
D6. A 1 for me.
Okay. Okay. So, you all drift off to sleep. Weimar, you wake up in the evening. It's still you're facing the what passes for a window in the longhouse. It's still dark. You can see the moon outside. As you sort of like stir a little, your foot accidentally like bumps into like Quentin. You're now awake as well. And as you sort of open your eyes, Weimar, you become aware that there's a figure silhouetted against the light of the moon, like stood at the foot of like the straw mattresses that you're sleeping on.
Mm-hmm. Not moving.
No, just stood there, not moving. And as the moonlight slowly filters in, you see the pale form of Cotton Nickel stood at the foot of your bed. Obviously, you see this as well, Quentin, because you're awake. Brock's having another heavy sleep in.
I'm going to slowly reach for my silver dagger.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
I'm staring sort of in well, I'm staring at Cotton Nickel, waiting for when movement happens. Really, is the thing.
Okay, he stood there in the light of the moon, his pale flesh. He almost looks like a statue. You don't see like his chest rising and falling or anything of that nature. But as he slowly takes a step forward, you see that like his beard and like much of his armor is like matted in like blood. And he takes a step forward and he looks down, obviously sees you're awake.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, listen, I don't have much time, but more are coming.
You thought to warn us, I say.
He says, while I still have some of the person that I once was, I thought the least I can do is warn you. It's too late for me, but it's not too late for the people who live here.
Cotton, this is very important. Can I help you pass?
He just like shakes his head like a little bit, and a little bit of a sad expression comes on his face. And at this point, I'm actually going to say you can make a charisma roll.
Oh boy. Well, praise Gale. Nah, it was almost a 1, but
He just shakes his head sadly, and he says, unfortunately, I can't allow that. And he says, you should know that the Red King is stirring in the White City.
all right.
And when he awakens, there will be more like me.
All right, Cotton. All right, that's all right.
He says, all I can do now is I'm going to try and get as far away from New Zealand as I can, whilst I still have the will to do so.
That's all right too.
He looks sad. He sort of like, he looks as though he's going to like put his hand out, then he like thinks better of it and lowers his hand, and he says, with any luck we'll not meet again. And as he says that, he slowly starts to like almost break apart and like disperse into a mist.
Mm-hmm.
And the mist just slowly disperses and dissipates until you're just staring into the darkness of the room.
Well, shit.
Well, that's the first name. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any sleeping for the rest of the night. So
Yeah, but we better add Red King to the list of stuff that needs looking at.
yes, it's
We're going to run out of parchment soon.
And as they're sort of having that hushed discussion, Brock, you are startled into wakefulness from your deep, deep slumber by like a voice that sounds like it's like right next to your ear, like whispering, and you recognise the voice of Cotton Nickel. But when you like look round, there's just like a thin vapour, like dispersing like a morning's mist, and the voice just says, very quietly, as though it's fading away as it's talking, just says, "It's the garlic."
So that wakes me up at that point.
It's like it's literally like someone's put their mouth like right next to your ear.
All right. Well, I'll just wake up saying, "The garlic, the garlic."
Yeah, so you guys are having this like quiet discussion, like, "Oh, right, Red King," and all some Brock's like, "Oh, it's the garlic! It's the garlic!"
I don't think the garlic can hurt you, Brock.
No, but it can maybe it can hurt those things. It's one of the herbs the soldiers were talking about, or at least protect us from those things. And I'll start searching around for where I'll put it.
Yeah, he pulls out this like big, like crudely tied together like bulb of garlic he got off the kitchen.
Yeah. And I'll throw it to one of these lot, and I'll go and search the kitchen or whatever storage we've got for food, and I'll start looking for more right in the middle of the night.
Okay, roll me a d6.
I thought.
Yeah, you find another bulb of garlic. So which of you guys is taking the bulb that was thrown to you?
I'll let Holy Sword have it.
Okay, so let me just put a dose of garlic on a Weimar's sheet.
put a bit of garlic on the sword.
There
That's
we go.
it. Mush it down, nice and sticky paste.
Yeah.
That's been added to your sheet, and obviously I've left one on your sheet, Brock, because you managed to locate some more. I mean, there's not a lot of it, but you've basically managed to locate like another like couple of bulbs of garlic, like another like dose of garlic, effectively.
But we don't grow it, do we?
No.
Anyway.
Yeah, we're gonna be trading for it now.
Mm.
I'm imagining that like when they come to like build the tower, and there'll be like people like smearing garlic on like the walls of the
There's
the village.
Painting it on.
like
with
funnily
a
enough,
garlic paint.
yeah,
on a
there's- no,
second coat.
Like there's not gonna be any mortar. It's just gonna be garlic paste.
Now the regional delicacy, just garlic.
So
Yeah, new garlic land.
just like people, like everything they cook in the village, just putting garlic into it. So like
Garlic
everyone's
soup.
eating garlic all the time.
Yep. It's garlic bread, but it's actually just garlic.
Yeah.
You want to eat
It's garlic.
potatoes
We
with
just
garlic.
rubbed some bread on. There you go.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a rather morose rest of the night in search of garlic and contemplating the fact that, okay, well, the Red King is one thing, but then we have several of these ones running around, and clearly we have no way to keep them away from our bedchambers, so that's a thing.
Not the garlic.
Yeah, hopefully the garlic will do that. but-
And I
Looks
think
like they're not slightly perturbed by garlic.
as Weimar says, "Oh, we've got no way to keep them away from our bedchambers," and Quentin's like, "Apart from the garlic." And you hear like the rattle of pots and pans as like Brock's like raiding
yeah,
the
it's
kitchen.
like frenzy, and it's like, where is it?
I think that's where we sort of like fade to black on this slightly morose scene as the sun starts to rise, and that is where we're going to end the session for this evening, guys. Thank you very much. I hope you all enjoyed the session.
Yep.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that was good.
Obviously we'll sort out XP and whatnot, but for now I'm going to end the stream. So thanks for anyone who's watching this now or in the future. Hopefully we'll catch you for the next one.